What can I say about Concord that hasn't already been said? Well, honestly, I think there's a lot about this game that hasn't got the attention it deserves, and with over 40 hours in the game in the last 6 days, I think I'm the right one to let you know what Concord is really about. At its core, Concord is a 5v5 multiplayer hero shooter, developed by Firewalk Studios and published by Sony Interactive Entertainment. You pick from a group of 16 characters with different weapons and abilities and jump straight into game mode that focuses mostly on demolishing your opponents. This is all the basics though. This is what you can easily gather from just watching a trailer, so I don't blame anyone who thinks Concord is a been there done that kind of game. Once you start to dig into the design of the game though, the nuances that really make the game unique begin to shine. Let's lay out a roadmap of elements that'll break down on why Concord is really worth analyzing on its own merits. Number 1, a level of fidelity and polish that very few games have. Number 2, well thought out lore and world building that can really make you appreciate the maps and characters in a new light. And finally, number 3, mechanics like variants, the crew builder, and crew bonuses that lend the game to having more dimensions than many would expect. First, let's talk about what I think is easiest to love about Concord, just how rock solid the game is, both visually and technically. Being a game that has spent 6 years in development since Firewalk was founded in 2018, and being published by PlayStation, allows for Concord to heartily stand up to the level of visual clarity and bug-free splendor that other Sony games like God of War and Horizon boast as well. Just looking at the lighting engine, character animations, facial capture, and particle effects, it's obvious that years of focused, quality work went into making Concord a visual feast. I love dropping into a new map and wandering around its halls, taking in the varied architecture and stunning color palettes that make each zone feel atmospherically distinct. There are always unique little alien plants dotting landscapes of whatever area you're fighting in, adding bursts of color to what otherwise could just be drab gray hallways. The levels are full of fun little touches like these statues in Star Chamber or the burger joint in the sorting hub on Silo. The game is also completely technically sound, running at a super smooth frame rate and with no visual glitches. The only hiccup I've encountered in 40 hours of play is being kicked out of a match maybe 3 times, but that also might have been my internet connection. But then there's the lore and world building. The aspect of Concord that I expect will go underappreciated the most, but the area where I think the Firewalk dev team really sets Concord apart from other games in the shooter genre. As of recording this, I haven't fully been able to experience the weekly cinematic vignettes that will show off the dialogue, performance, and motion capture that a ton of work have been put into. For me, those vignettes and an evolving storyline is one of the biggest elements that makes me interested in Concord. But even outside of that, the lore is still readily available in the game's Galactic Guide. The Galactic Guide acts as a hub for all the information on the history, characters, and planets that you can see in the game, all presented through this gorgeously laid out and animated map of the wilds, the part of the galaxy the game takes place in. What's special about the Galactic Guide, though, is that you're only given access to it piece by piece. Lore is provided to you about a location and the planet it's on once you've played them on a map for the first time, and character background details are unlocked once you reach level 3 with any free gunner. This addicting and rewarding loop of progressing what info I had access to is part of what pushed me to play so many hours in my first week with the game, and I genuinely spent hours poring over and taking notes on the fascinating background that the writing team had created. As I mentioned, every map, world, and character is based in the lore of the game. That might seem self-evident, but once you begin to put the pieces together, it becomes obvious that a crazy amount of work went into the disparate parts of this game harmonizing. Let's focus in on one example, my favorite map in the game, Star Chamber. Star Chamber is a map dripping in color and ambiance from the get-go, a maze of ruins built into shimmering indigo walls, all orbiting around a luminescent golden orb split neatly in two. I always appreciated this map just by how visually striking it was, but it was the story behind it that really made me love it. Star Chamber is located on a planet called Gloom, a world located on the edge of the explorable universe and isolated from the conflict of the galaxy for centuries. The ancient culture on Gloom developed a deep religious reverence for the glowing asteroids that peppered their homeworld as they crashed down from an unexplorable swath of black space fog called Nothing. They built their culture around the biggest of these asteroids and used the place they called the Star Chamber as a temple for religious reflection and scientific study. This culture, left untouched for millennia, was eventually destroyed by the Guild, Concord's imperialistic corporate force that currently rules the galaxy. The Guild realized they didn't have much they could do on Gloom, and they left the planet abandoned after causing a genocide of that ancient culture. This story, found in the Galactic Guide, gives an air of somber reverence to Star Chamber, and it juxtaposes wonderfully against the chaotic shooter gameplay that takes place on it. This level of world-building nuance and compelling detail exists for every single one of Concord's dozen maps, supported by other lore about the Guild, the Free Gunners, and the culture of the wilds, that the Galactic Guide also contains. Since I spent so much time on Star Chamber, I won't go into the equally compelling backstories of each of the 16 Free Gunners, but I assure you that there are just as interesting stories for each of them as well. Finally, let's close with the mechanical nuance of Concord. The genre of this game, 5v5 shooter, is quite familiar. And the game modes aren't anything groundbreaking either, but the Concord team smartly innovated in the cracks of that tried and true formula, introducing variants, a crew builder, and crew bonuses. Each character has their core weapon and a couple of abilities that cause them all to play quite differently, and cater to a variety of skill levels and playstyles, but that core kit is supplemented by a passive ability tied to their variant. Take Teo, for example, a free gunner with an automatic rifle, smoke bombs, and grenades. He's a character that plays most similarly to other first-person shooters like Call of Duty. His first variant, the one you start the game with, has a passive ability that lets you get a speed boost for a couple seconds every time you do a dodge roll. This allows him to be super speedy and agile, which pairs great with his gun and grenades. But through playing the game and completing a few missions, you can unlock Teo Variant 2, which has a totally different passive bonus. Teo 2 has an extended magazine for his rifle and a couple extra grenades, which can completely turn the tides for a guy like me who might not be the best at aiming. This variety in variants means each free gunner can be customized to fit different playstyles, depending on your skill level and taste. The variants can be swapped out in the Crew Builder, a section of the menu that allows you to customize which characters you want access to on the character select screen when you start a match or respawn. This means you can choose multiple variants of your favorite free gunner, completely omit ones you aren't interested in, and put the ones you're best at near the front of your roster so they're easily accessible. Finally, let's talk about the crew bonuses, Concord's secret mechanical weapon that I think really helps it to stand apart. On top of these weapons, abilities, and variant passives, every character has a class. But unlike the simple breakdown of assault, tank, and support that you might see in other games, Concord's classes are tied to their crew bonuses, passive abilities that are permanently added to you as you progress through a match. Take for example Itzy, a quick character that teleports around the map and melts enemies with a powered up Uzi. Her crew bonus is faster movement, which applies the moment you die as her and stays with you. That means you can then swap to a heavier, tankier character like One-Off, and he'll move noticeably faster. Each character has one of these 6 crew bonuses, including faster healing, faster reload speed, quicker dodge cooldown, steadier weapon recoil, and increased weapon range. And the best part is, if you play a variety of characters, these 6 bonuses can stack. So if you play your cards right, master a group of heroes, and switch between them liberally, you can be totally buffed up by the end of a match. This system also means that every character's weaknesses can be mitigated, making them all feel incredibly viable. Feel like Roko's reloads take too long? Play a quick life as Lark or Kips, and that's no longer a worry. Want Lark's Spore Pods to be able to reach further enemies? A dabble as Haymar or Veil will send your projectiles further. Crew bonuses are a system that keeps every character in play, pushes you to learn a varied set of free gunners, and noticeably impacts your gameplay as any given match progresses. These are just 3 of the reasons I love Concord. I could also talk about how tight the gunplay is, how excellent Daniel Pemberton's score for the game is, how well the map design pairs with the dodge rolls and double jumps that the free gunners have, and of course get much deeper into the story and lore. Concord is a game that I feel has gotten an unfair rap. The games industry has been trending towards games that stuff themselves full of battle passes and microtransactions, and require countless hours of your time to keep up with. Concord rocks this boat just by costing a totally reasonable $40, which it more than makes up for by being stuffed with charm, excellently designed, and totally and utterly addictive.